Long ago, in a quiet green village called Barrien, there lived a kind man named Kofi. He was tall, gentle, and loved by everyone. When Kofi smiled, even the saddest heart in the village felt light again. He told stories to the children under the big baobab tree, fixed broken tools for his neighbors, and always said, "A good heart builds a strong home." His wife Amma loved him more than words could say. They had little money, but they had peace and joy that shone brighter than gold. One rainy evening, the clouds grew dark and heavy. The wind blew hard, and the rain poured as if the sky itself was crying. Kofi ran outside to cover his crops so they would not spoil. The rain was too strong, and by the time he came back inside, he was cold and shaking. Amma made him soup and prayed for him, but through the night his fever grew. The village healer came with herbs and roots, but nothing seemed to help. In the middle of the night, Kofi took Amma's hand and whispered softly, "Don't cry, my love. If I ever go, I will always find my way back to you." His voice faded, and he closed his eyes. The rain stopped, and silence filled the room. By morning, Kofi was gone. The villagers buried him under the baobab tree where he used to tell stories, and everyone in Barrien said, "Kofi was a good man. May his soul rest in peace." Time passed, the seasons changed, the trees grew taller, and the world moved on. But Kofi did not rest. Somewhere far away, in a busy city filled with lights, noise, and people rushing everywhere, a man opened his eyes in a small hospital bed. He looked around confused and asked the nurse, "What is my name?" The nurse looked at the tag on his hand and said, "Your name is Kofi." He smiled weakly, though the name felt like something from a dream he couldn't remember. Kofi grew stronger day by day. He learned how to work with wood again, building chairs, tables, and toys for children. Everyone liked him because he was kind and helpful, just as he had been in Barrien, though he did not know it. One day he met a beautiful woman named Efua. She liked his calm spirit and his hard-working hands. They got married, and soon they had 3 lovely children named Yao, Essie, and Kojo. Kofi was a happy father. He built a cozy home, told his children bedtime stories, and worked hard to make sure they never went hungry. People in the city called him the man with the golden heart. But sometimes, late at night, when the moon was full and the world was quiet, Kofi had strange dreams. In his dreams, he saw a woman crying under a tree. He heard someone calling his name softly, as if from far away. He would wake up sweating and whisper, "Who is calling me?" Efua would turn in her sleep and tell him it was just a dream, but Kofi always felt that the voice was real. It sounded sad and familiar. Years went by, and Kofi's children grew taller and wiser. One Sunday morning, while the family was eating breakfast, Yao looked up and said, "Father, you always tell stories about your old village. Can we go there one day?" Kofi froze for a moment. He had never told them much about his past. He said, "I don't remember much about that place, but sometimes I feel like it's still waiting for me." Efua smiled gently and said, "Maybe you should go, Kofi. Sometimes the heart remembers what the mind forgets." Kofi thought about her words all day. That night, he couldn't sleep. He dreamed again about the woman under the tree, but this time she smiled at him and said, "Come home." The next morning, Kofi made up his mind. He told his family to pack their bags. They would visit his old village, the place he had long forgotten. The journey was long. They drove past rivers that shone like silver, through tall forests where birds sang sweet songs, and over hills that touched the clouds. The closer they got, the quieter Kofi became. He looked out the window and whispered to himself, "I know this road. I know these trees." When they finally saw the old wooden sign that said, "Welcome to Barrien village," Kofi's heart began to beat fast. They parked the car and stepped out. The village was still beautiful, though quieter than he remembered. Old women sold fruits by the roadside. Children laughed as they played in the dirt. Kofi looked around slowly, and memories began to return like sunlight breaking through clouds. He said, "I used to drink from that well, and that big tree over there. I used to tell stories under it." His children followed him, amazed that his father suddenly remembered so much. As they walked further, Kofi stopped in front of a small, old house covered in vines. The roof was bent and the windows were dusty, but it looked strangely familiar. His hands trembled as he whispered, "This was my home." Efua and his children looked around. Essie said, "It looks empty, Father. Are you sure?" Kofi nodded. "Wait here. I'll go in first." He walked slowly toward the door and reached out to touch it, but when his fingers met the wood, they went right through. He pulled back in shock. He tried again, but his hand passed through like smoke. His eyes widened. He looked down at himself and saw a soft white glow around his body. His feet were not touching the ground. Efua gasped, "Kofi, what is happening?" He turned to them, tears in his eyes. "I think I was never alive in this life," he said quietly. "I think I am the man who never came home." His children ran to hug him, but their arms passed through his chest like air. Essie began to cry, "Papa, don't go." Kofi smiled sadly and said, "My sweet ones, don't be afraid. I didn't come to scare you. I came to remember who I was." He turned to the old house again and whispered, "Now I know. This is where my story ended and where it must rest." The wind began to blow gently through the trees, and golden leaves danced around them. Kofi knelt down and looked at his family with love. He said softly, "Love never dies, my children. It only changes where it lives." As he spoke, his body shimmered brighter and brighter until he became light itself. Then, like the morning mist, he faded away. The air grew calm again, and all that was left was peace. Efua and the children stood there quietly. Yao whispered, "He didn't leave us, Mama. He just went home." They stayed by the old house until the stars filled the sky. The night was cool and the wind was soft. And as it moved through the trees, they could almost hear a gentle voice whispering, "Remember me, not with tears, but with love. When you feel the wind, when you hear laughter, that's me, still with you." From that day, people in Barrien said that when you pass by the big baobab tree, sometimes you will hear a soft voice telling stories to the wind. They say it is Kofi, the good man who forgot he was gone, but found his way home again. And in that village, under the moonlight, love still whispers, reminding everyone that even when people leave this world, their love never truly fades.